Thanks for joining us in this second class in this series called Jesus Among Secular Gods. This series is based on a video series, actually, by Ravi Zacharias and Vince Vitale. We were showing this on Sunday mornings before the coronavirus, and so since we can't stream it, I've been listening to it and sharing it with you. It's really an encouraging video series. I think it's something that will help build your faith and help remind us all why we are Christians and why we believe in the narrative of the Bible and the authority of the Bible. So Jesus among secular gods, well, when you think about secular culture, culture is what most people tend to believe and what most people do and what their values are. And in the United States, there is a secular culture that carries great weight. It influences our children, it influences our values, it influences much of what we do. And Christians are supposed to be countercultural. We're not supposed to think like the world does or act like the world does or have the values that the world has. We have a particular way of viewing the world based on our faith in God. So what is this worldview? And of course, a worldview is a prism or some glasses through which you look at life. And in our culture today, the preponderating worldview is that there is no such thing as absolute truth, and that anyone who claims that they can know truth morally or truth about God or truth about our world is prideful and arrogant, and that we should judge no one's truth, and any person's truth is as good as another's. In fact, they would argue that it is impossible to discern what truth is. Truth is not discernible. And here's the interesting thing about this. The view that there is no absolute truth and all truths are equal is an opinion, the same way an opinion is that there is an absolute truth. So interestingly, in our culture, the faith or belief that there is no absolute truth, that you can't know the difference between right or wrong, you can't judge anybody, is a faith. And they have arrogantly themselves said that anyone that believes you can know truth is someone that you need to watch out for, and they're a problem. And so for that very reason, Christians, you and I, who believe there is an absolute truth and that we can know who God is and know what he asks of us, we are countercultural. Now, why do they believe that? One of the main reasons they believe it is science. Now, this picture you see here, this is the Milky Way galaxy. And what you're looking at here are two huge gas bubbles on either side of our galaxy. And if you look real carefully, the blue in the middle right are gases that are coming to our galaxy, and the red in the middle left are gases that are leaving our galaxy. Those gas bubbles, which were only seen for the first time in the last few years by astronomers, are 25,000 light years long. Now, science is amazing. What we've learned about our universe is amazing. But many people, many non-believing intellectuals or non-believing scientists have said that science is the reason they don't believe in God. And they also point out that science can't prove God. Now, is science truly incompatible with God? What I want to tell you today is, as a Christian, do not let anybody tell you that science is incompatible with God or that science disproves God. Because the truth is, what I believe is that science is very compatible with God. Not only is it compatible with God, but science actually points to the existence of God. They say that you can't prove God with science, but I would argue that science is only best explained by a faith in God. So the first point, we're going to make three simple points in today's lesson, is that the universe has a beginning, and that points to God. Now, only in the last 100 years have scientists believed that through science you could prove that the universe had a beginning. You've heard about the Big Bang. There was nothing, and all of a sudden there was this Big Bang, and the universe came into existence. One of the ways they know this, when they study galaxies, they all seem to be moving apart from each other. And they've been doing this for millions of years, so they claim. And so they know at some time it was all together, and once it was created through the Big Bang, it started expanding. Now, here's the real question, though. And by the way, the Bible's always claimed there was a beginning. It took science close to 2,000 years to prove that there was a beginning, and it all started with a Big Bang. Well, the Bible's always claimed that, because it claimed that God was the cause of that beginning, and that's the one thing that science really can't explain. How do you go from not being a universe to all of a sudden being a universe? Science can't explain that cause, but it only makes sense that if it was nothing and it became something, that there was some cause outside of space and time that created that. Now, what better explanation for something outside of space and time that created the universe than God? Boyle, a well-known scientist in his time, said that one of the reasons a lot of scientists were actually slow to accept the Big Bang Theory when it came out is it fit so well with the explanation of God. It was too close. And they thought surely the Bible wasn't right all along, but the truth is the Bible does offer the best explanation as to the origin of our earth. So that's the first point. The fact the universe had a beginning, at one time didn't exist, and then all of a sudden started to exist, points to a creator, and it points to God. The second thing that points to God about science is the incredible design that you find within our universe. It's finely tuned, and what's even more interesting is it's finely tuned for life right here. And any sort of life in the universe would require some really fine tuning. Take the Earth, for example. You realize that if we were a little closer to the sun, we would burn up. Just think about hot summers. You get a little closer to the sun, the entire earth would burn up, and there would not be a habitat that would support life. Or if we were just a little further from the sun, think of some of the worst winters you've seen. If we were a little further from the sun, the entire earth would become ice, an ice age, and it would not support life. The earth was placed in just the right place to support life. Think about the moon. The moon is a very important part of our life ecosystem. The gravitational pull of the moon is what causes the tilt of the earth. And did you know if we didn't have the tilt of the earth, we wouldn't have the 4 seasons. We wouldn't have a winter and a spring and a summer and a fall. The tilt of the earth helps support the cycle of life. Another thing that the moon does is that it affects our tides. You may not think about this, but if it weren't for the tides, it would just be dead water and it wouldn't support life. What causes that water to teem with life and to bring nutrients to the fish is the coming and going of the tides. Without the moon, it wouldn't support sea life the way we know it. What an amazing thing that the earth was created in just the right way, designed in just the right place so that it would support life. The only thing that explains that is God. Chance doesn't explain that. In fact, one Cambridge astronomer said honestly, the idea that this all happened by accident, that there was some explosion that we can't tell you where it came from, but there was this explosion. We don't believe in God, so for some reason there was an explosion and a whole universe came out of it, and then wow, we know it was by chance because we don't believe in God, but all of a sudden here was this earth at just the right distance from the sun and a moon to tilt it so it could support life. The idea that all that could happen by chance, this Cambridge astronomer says it's about the same concept that if you had a hurricane or a tornado go through a junkyard, that when it passed, sitting there, formed by that tornado or hurricane, would be a brand new 737 airplane. That is ludicrous, but that's the position that people put themselves in when they try and explain life without the concept of God. Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist. And one of the things about Richard Dawkins, of course, he believes in evolution, doesn't believe in God, but he himself struggled so greatly. Is that, do I need to pause? Is that, do we need to, or do I keep going? Well, we may be having technical difficulties. I don't know if y'all are hearing all the static, but here, should I keep going now? Okay, I apologize for that. I don't know if y'all heard that, but there was a huge amount of static here. I thought there was a tornado or hurricane coming through, and I'm looking around and I don't see any airplanes. So, but going back to our story, so Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist, does not believe in God, but in his own life, struggling to figure out how it is even possible that life would exist, he entertained the idea that aliens may have come down, intelligent aliens, and planted life here. Now, you know what? Well, where did the aliens come from? Isn't that interesting? There's such a bias against God that this evolutionary biologist, who's struggling to explain where our life came from, will accept intelligent aliens because he knows nothing makes sense except intelligence to create the life that we have here. And doesn't God make more sense? Because an intelligent alien doesn't explain where the aliens came from, and it still doesn't explain where the universe came from. So what happens when you don't believe in God, you actually have to embrace some irrational ideas about the design and life that is in our universe. A third point, or last point really, in this particular statement here, is that the universe is systematic. Now, here's an interesting thing, by the way. The way that people study our universe is they study the processes they see at work and figure out that they've always been going on. They've been going on for a long time. And so that's why they assume the universe is so old. They think, well, we've been expanding outwards, and surely it's always been at the same speed. And when we look at rock formation, surely everything was always operating at the same speed. But the universe is very regular. And when you look at the regularity of the universe, it helps you to understand that there is some sort of design in there. It's like clockwork. I don't know if you remember a few months ago in one of my sermons, I was expressing or sharing with you that they've discovered not very long ago that there are galaxies that are hundreds of thousands of light years apart, and they seem to be moving in synchronization with each other, almost like there's some invisible framework that is controlling all their movements. So they're moving, and somehow their movements are affecting each other. Well, this sort of systematic organization and design in the universe is evidence of a creator, not an explosion that just arbitrarily made something. Now, here's the interesting part about this, though. As an explosion at the beginning could not have been systematic, was not regular, and doesn't fit the type of universe we have. So we have nothing, chaos, and all of a sudden we have an explosion which should have led to more chaos, and out of the explosion comes something that works like clockwork, something that is designed, that works in harmony with itself. That explanation can only be made by understanding that it was created by a God that put that design. So really science, you can't say that science disproves God. Science does not disprove God. It doesn't even answer the biggest questions about where we came from and why there is life. Science can only examine what's already here. The truth is, the fact that science can see such great harmony and design in our universe, well, only God explains that there could be science. Einstein said that the most incomprehensible thing about this universe is that this universe is comprehensible. Just the fact that there could be this vast expanse and that there's laws that govern the universe and that there's all this design and synchronization and science and math to it, Einstein says, how on earth could that possibly have come about? Only God explains that. Chance does not. Darwin himself said that just the fact that we can have faith in our own reasoning, not that I agreed with much of his reasoning, but he himself admitted just the fact that we have a mind and we can reason and develop logic and have faith in our logic blows your mind. How could we have thoughts, and how can we reason and put together ideas and concepts? Well, our own life and our mental life is evidence of design, not evidence of chaos, but evidence of a creator that created design and gave us life. The problem with science is there's too many things it can't explain. So what Ravi Zacharias says is really they have a God, he calls it the God of the gap, because there's all these gaps. They don't know why everything works in such great order when it started with chaos. They don't know where the explosion came to start everything. They have all these gaps, and the reason he calls it the God of the gap, they don't know how it happened, so they just have faith that it doesn't matter. Where the Bible explanation is much more reasonable. The Bible explanation is the reason that we have life, the reason that everything is so well ordered, even though it started out of nothing, is that a God, our God, created it. That makes so much more sense than the view that you can't know anything and we have no idea how this happened and it was just pure accident or pure chance. Now, in Romans chapter 1, 18 through 20, it says the following. It says, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse." So listen, it says God's invisible qualities. The Bible admits there's some things you can't see, and that his eternal power and divine nature are clearly seen and understood from what has been made. Now think about this for a second. Here we are on a globe, an earth that rotates at 1,000 miles per hour. We're orbiting the sun at 67,000 miles per hour. All the while, we're hurtling through the universe at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And with all that, humans live. All of it is orderly. All of it makes sense. All of it works in synchronization. The fact all this can happen is mind-boggling, and it's a testament to the order of the person that created it. It's a testament to the fact that this universe is more than the byproduct of some crazy chaos or chance. And he says, by the way, right here in verse 20, he says that all this is clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. Well, the word made there in Greek is poema, which is the word we get our English word poem from. So when you look at the universe, it's like this beautiful poetry that comes from God. The poetry just makes sense that it was developed by a creator. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, Paul says this. He says, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do." For we are God's workmanship. God molded us. He fashioned us. He created us and made us. Well, that word again is poema. It's the same word that he used in Romans. We are God's poem. God made us. He designed us in the same way he designed the universe so that it worked in a way that made sense, and everything has a purpose, including the moon and the seasons and the tides. The same way he made a universe that works in synchronization, he made us, and we're his poem. And God made us, and he values us. He made us and gave us a valuable life. He gave us a purpose for our life. We know that God's poetry in our life is sacred. So love is sacred in our life. Relationships are meaningful. The way we live is important. God gives us a purpose in our life. We're his workmanship. We're his poetry. We're his poems. And so science not only can't explain where the universe came from or life and where it came from, or why there's such design and intricacy that came out of chaos, it doesn't explain why love is sacred and why relationships are important. It doesn't tell us what our purpose in life is. So when you think about science and compare it to the Christian worldview, or you think about the prevailing cultural worldview that you can't know anything and any view is as good as another, well, those sorts of philosophies pale in comparison to the Christian worldview, and they don't answer the important questions about life at all. So remember that one of the great things about the Christian worldview is it makes sense about our origin, where we came from, who made us. It makes sense about purpose, why we were made, what we're supposed to be doing in life. It makes sense about meaning, why it's important to love each other, why it's important to make relationships more valuable than things or accomplishments. And last of all, it explains our destiny. Not only what we're here for, but what we're meant for, where we're going, who we're going to be. So remember this verse that we started this all off with last week out of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. Sanctify, set apart Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that's in you, but do it with gentleness and reverence. We don't want to be proud. That pushes people away from God. We don't want to be arrogant. That puts us in the place of God, but we do want to hang deeply onto our faith in Christ. Let him be the main thing in our life, because people are going to see the way we live before they hear what we say. And then we also want to be ready to give an account. You don't have to be brilliant to argue that the universe had a beginning, that the universe was created in a great way for life to live, and it has this incredible design, and only God explains that. You don't have to be brilliant to know that and hang your hat on it. And you know what? Where did we learn that first from? Right here. The creator and author of the universe didn't leave us here alone without any direction. He made it clear through miracles and prophets and through the compilation of his word that he cared about us and wanted us to know why we're here and that we have a direction. So I hope you'll join us over 4 more series as we dig into why we believe Jesus and why Jesus stands out among secular gods. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you next week.